Okay, it's 10 a.m. I'd like to convene this meeting of the Environmental Committee of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District. Given that it is a requirement for a board member to be chair, and since Alina is out, that falls to me. And if you could take roll, please.
Yeah. Director Foltz,
Here.
Lori Mickelson,
Here.
Michael Duffy,
Here.
Robert Williams.
Present.
Cool. We have a quorum.
Yes, we do. Any changes to the agenda? No. This is oral communications. It's a portion agenda reserved for communications to the public on items not on the agenda. Actually, I probably should get into the, is there anybody online, by the way?
Yeah. Third.
Need to,
Nobody's online.
nobody's online. Okay. Any comments from anybody present? Okay. We will move on to the Olympia Tour recap presentation.
Yeah. So I'll pull up my slides and get into that. There. Okay. So I'm just going to provide a little recap of our Olympia tour that happened a few Saturdays ago. So the agenda for the presentation, just talk a little bit about the details of the tour, what actually went down, the goals of the tour, and then we'll talk a little bit about volunteer program that the tour has kind of spawned, and feedback we got from participants. So some of the details of the tour. Our speakers were Jody McGraw, Laurel Bard from the RCD, Angie Grice from the RCD, as well as myself. And the logistics, it was on Saturday, July 12th, and it was from 9 to 10:30. It got kind of hot out there at the end, so I'm glad we did it early. A 1.5-mile route around the property with like 6 informational stops, as well as information along the way, just Jody pointing out like cool plants or whatever else. And we had 41 signups and 30 attendees. And some of the goals of the tour were to showcase the Olympia Watershed Restoration Project and kind of highlight our work to do this challenging work of managing invasive plants. We also wanted to highlight the unique value of the Olympia Watershed property. Obviously, there's habitat for endangered species there. It also serves as our watershed property, providing its groundwater. It's a recreation area for the public. And there's also the historical mining equipment or junk, as it's termed sometimes, out there as well. And it's interesting to see the kind of markers of that past historical mining activity. It also helps us to kind of have public outreach and create connections with our customers, which I think is really important. And we also hope to launch a volunteer program from this tour. So our first volunteer event is going to be on August 16th, and the focus of it will be pulling invasive broom. Obviously, we have the big project that went on that finished in like March of this year to remove all the broom, but broom grows back. So we want to get ahead of it, and we do have a little bit of grant funding to actually go out there and remove some of it, as well as create a kind of maintenance plan. But that's not going to cover the whole kind of breadth of the issue. And so having volunteers out there will be very helpful and will allow us to hit those hot spots. When it hits rainy season again, the broom is going to just pop up and really grow fast. So it'd be great to get it before it gets there, and we're able to remove it without all the problems of dealing with biomass. And we'll have Jody McGraw on the tour. She'll provide training, fun facts, and oversight. We'll kind of be in some areas that people usually wouldn't be able to see on the property. And it's, you know, a public recreation area. So it's kind of a give back to your recreation area. It's kind of the idea. In terms of feedback from the tour, attendees generally found the tour valuable from what I heard. There were lots of great questions. And yeah, I always find that really interesting to see that people are interested in what's happening. One thing that I guess I should have suspected maybe, but I wasn't really ready for, is that people did not know that it was a public recreation area. As you can see, our sign on the right there says no trespassing. So yeah, I think people were kind of surprised to hear that. And based on that feedback, well, and the state of the sign, we are going to make a new sign that maybe is more, lets people know that they can actually go on this property. And then there's also some enthusiasm for the broom removal and the volunteer event. I also saw some people picking some broom as we were walking along. So yeah, seems like it'll be a good connection there. And that is it for my slides. Any questions on that or comments?
Yeah, any, Robert,
Yeah,
go
I'd
ahead.
like to chip in there since
Yeah.
I went along. I'd agree with Chris. That turned out much better than anticipated. I would say the only limiting factor there was the limited size of the group that was available and getting the word out. People were really surprised to find out that not only was the property available, but that they could help by just pulling out the young groom as they walked, and a lot of people were doing that. One of the other things that I had mentioned to Chris is that I think it would be very much worth reaching out to both Cabrillo and the UC for any of their environmental or maybe geological sciences programs that could get into the more protected areas to do the same. But yeah, there was definite interest there.
Okay. Comments, Lori, Michael?
I have a question. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael.
You were talking about trying kind of timeline wise, trying to get this done before the rains, just from a biomass perspective, getting it out. Typically from a broom pulling operation, how much material do you end up with?
It's a good question. I've really only been a part of that big effort where you know, we did the whole property, and that was, we were pulling like 18-wheeler fulls of material. But those plants had been growing for, in some areas, 10 years. So right now they're like maybe 6 inches tall or something. So it's really not going to be much biomass at all.
Okay.
Yeah, like some of the smaller ones we could realistically just pull and just leave there kind of to the sides. But once they get bigger, we can't do that, especially because the species there rely on open sand to kind of fulfill their cycles. And so, yeah, once it gets bigger, we do need to deal with it, and it would be more of hauling it off. I can't really put a number to it, but
So it's more of a biological thing where you don't want a bunch of material on the ground covering up that sand just for the species.
yeah,
Right.
and that's part of, like, we have a permit that allows us to do this kind of work. And
Yeah.
that's part of it is that we don't leave stuff covering the surface, because this is intended to help the species and open up the areas rather than hindering them.
Thank you.
Lori?
It's a silly question. It's about the sign.
Mhm.
So if it was off limits before, when did it become a recreational area? If you could just talk a little bit about that history, that'd be great.
That's a great question. I do not actually know. Yeah, Scott, do you have any?
I wanna say it was probably 15 or 20 years ago.
Okay.
There was some push from the local Ziny Equestrian Center to continue to use that and not be locked out of it.
Yeah.
When we put up some fences and stuff like that. And so then they put up that, not barbed wire fence, but that other wire fence.
Yeah.
And that kind of kept the area closed off where we didn't want people to go. And then we did open up the loop and things like that that were already existing, but we widened them up. And but it was because of the equestrian people being.
So are dogs allowed?
I don't believe that dogs are allowed on the
Is
property.
it a sensitive species?
On
On a leash they
On a
are?
leash they are.
Oh,
Okay.
cool.
There's waste baskets out there for people to put their trash in.
Fantastic. Well, this seems like it was a really wonderful event, well thought out, well planned. Thank you.
Yeah, I had just had a couple of comments. You know, with respect to the broom removal, I guess if they're really small, you can pull the roots out, but this time of year, they kind of stick into the ground, right?
Mm.
I've always been more successful pulling broom out, when it's, the ground's a little wetter.
Yes.
Um, the, this goes to the question I've asked many times, which is what are the neighbors doing about their broom situation? Because ultimately, this almost feels like a hamster wheel for us if the neighbors, because broom seeds don't sort of just stay according to property boundaries.
Yeah.
Is there any push to get the neighbors to deal with their broom situation?
I mean, I would love to, but I don't think that we have the resources, or we can't force them to kind of do anything. One thing I will note is the Lockhart Gold shaded fuel break on the ridge there. They will be dealing with broom up there along that whole ridge. So that would deal with some of the neighbors' broom. And that would be, I would think, some of the most impactful, because on the ridge there, it can obviously float on the wind down to the properties below. So I think that would be a good start in terms of managing ours as well as the neighbor's broom. But yeah, in terms of like a broader scale,
I mean,
initiative.
it's, yeah, and you know, the whole sort of maintenance part of it is, for me, the bigger question. I mean, you can get money to do something one time, but if you look at the Graham Hill fuel break effort that was done, I think a couple of years ago, I mean, you can't really tell that there was anything done. It all grows back.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like if you're going to spend money or spend time, is there a way to actually maintain this in a fashion that makes any sense? My concern about the RCD activity, though, I think they did say there might be some money for maintenance is, you know, a year from now, it'll just be the same. And that doesn't really get us anywhere. I guess, you know, part of the issue, I think, with the access into the into the Olympia area was liability in terms of people getting hurt. There are areas up there that are dicey, and particularly with some of the old mining activities and that sort of thing. So I think the compromise was to allow some access where there weren't those issues, but hopefully to maintain off limits for the rest of it. The other part of this is there might be some partnerships that we could enter into with people like the Zianti Land Bank and the like, to actually, you know, our job is delivering water. That's our primary focus, is delivering water and protecting the areas that directly deliver the water. Their job is more environmental in general, around preservation of areas like the Sandhills, and there might be partnership opportunities for us to explore with them to perhaps leverage what they're doing. And given what they're doing, they may have access to funding that we don't have access to. So there's, you know, there's always possibilities in that area. In terms of the volunteer program, how many people are signed up for August 16th so far?
Yeah, we have not really done much marketing or push. I think we got 5 people from just like the tour. But we're hoping to actually get like a full on, you know, social media and send out a news blast or whatever. So yeah, it's not many people so far, but we haven't really kicked it into high gear.
Well, I guess, you know, from my cynical point of view, I'd rather Jody focus on delivering that HCP by December as opposed to defocusing her on other things. That HCP is in its 7th or 8th year. It is way overdue. We've got to get that thing done.
And I'll also note that the
So-
HCP, you were kind of talking about long term, like what is happening with the broom maintenance. The HCP will have an endowment associated with it.
No, I get all that, but I want the HCP done, and I'm concerned about the amount of time she's spending on things other than HCP delivery, because at that meeting, she did not commit to delivering it in December.
I will say, and let me introduce myself. Jason Mullin, I'm the new general manager for the district, but I'll say that Chris has taken the initiative and set up a monthly meeting with Jody to make sure that she stays on track with that HCP.
Yeah, that would be really great. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, any comments from the public?
Hi, I'm Bruce Holloway from Boulder Creek. I went on the tour and I enjoyed it. I appreciated it. I've been on a tour of the property before, maybe 5 years ago, and I've been on broom pulls at that property and also Quail Hollow. So I appreciate what you said about the sign at the gate. And I hope that that's a goal for like this year, that there will be new signage.
Yeah.
I don't think that one sign is the end of the story. It seems like, the way I recall, I don't even know where to look this up, but the way I recall, public access had to be on the road. You couldn't just go off into the buildings. Like at Quail Hollow, I pretty much hike on the trails, but if I wanted to have a picnic off trail, I think that's okay. Most of Quail Hollow, not on certain Sandhills area there, but so when you go into a public park, you usually think that you can go pretty much anywhere within the boundary of the park, and this is a different situation where you're not really allowed to do that. So I think there's additional signage that probably needs to be within, in the interior to know what's going on. When Betsy Herbert was the environmental programs manager, she was really on the warpath against mountain bikers who were using that property, and I think that's why the fencing went in originally. So I had one more question. There was a fellow on the tour who, I think he was wearing a green t-shirt and maybe a baseball cap. He looked like his age was kind of in between mine and yours, and he seemed to know his way around there. So I wasn't sure if he was somebody that you knew or if he's somebody from a neighboring property. He might have been one of the custodians of that land trust property that's right next to it. I'm just wondering if you knew who the guy was with the green t-shirt.
I don't recall. Sorry.
Just even though-
Yeah. Hopefully he's one of our recreators who's using our property. But yeah, sorry, not sure.
Hi, Rick Moran from Ben Lomond. So anytime weed management comes up, I get concerned, and because we've had a past history of using herbicide, particularly glyphosate. And although I haven't heard herbicides being mentioned here, I want to make sure that if it is going to be used, when are we going to know that? All right. So as far as volunteers and things like that, I have a couple of suggestions here. There was a program in the past where they had volunteers run by a guy named Ken Moore, and beloved by a lot of people, but he used glyphosate. He used to walk around with a squirt bottle, and he had volunteers up there. And if I was one of those volunteers and I had been around that glyphosate, I would have stopped being a volunteer. So that has happened in the past. And whenever this thing comes up, I have to refer back to a beloved member of this community, Charlie Hensley. And Charlie passed away a couple of years ago. He was in weed management for the county. He died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because of his use of glyphosate and herbicides. And in my conversations with him before he died, he wanted to make sure that the people of this valley, the valley that he loved and lived in, knew the dangers and did not use cancerous herbicides. So just remembering Charlie Hensley and his dedicated life here. The other thing Bob mentioned about the treadmill. The other analogy might be more sufficient for me is Sisyphus. We're pushing a rock up the hill. They kept on pushing back. So we have broom all around here. And this is not a problem that's going to go away. This is a problem that we're going to have to deal with forever. All right. So just so we all know that no matter what the neighbors do and stuff like that, this is a problem that's going to be here forever. And as far as the sign goes, I've been a proponent of getting rid of that sign for a long time. But as much as I prefer to have that sign gone for new signage, One of the things that I've seen with parks and recreation areas throughout our region is when it's high fire danger and there's potential fire in those areas, they temporarily restrict visitation. So I think we should be cognizant that we should be able to do that. And, you know, this fire management thing with the broom and the chaparral area up there should be, you know, monitored so that we just don't allow people to go up there at any time. I had students in my high school classes at White Oak who used to party up there, and they would have fires and stuff like that. So I agree that that sign should go, but it shouldn't be without some acknowledgement that there's still dangers involved with the public. All right, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. And I think the comments of both Bruce and Rick made in terms of input and the signage makes a lot of sense. Main sign, other signs, restrictions, what have you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Rick, the policy is of the district is still no herbicides. If that policy were to change, it would have to come before the board. I'm assuming, Chris, that you're following no herbicides, so should be good on that.
Following our pest management policy
Okay,
and obviously the resolution, which is no glyphosate.
okay.
Right.
All right, there's nobody online, right? Yep, okay. So that's all. Chris, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Yep.
Which is the 5 Mile hazardous tree mitigation contracts. If you could
Yep. So I'll go ahead and take that one.
Yep.
So this item is about contracts for the CCC to go out there and remove the hazardous trees along our 5 Mile pipeline. The pipeline burned up during the CZU fire, and it was a solid source of water for the district, surface water. This contract would allow them to remove those 700 hazardous trees along the pipeline. And there's also associated costs for just logistics for them, which is a registered professional forester for oversight, and then just bathroom rentals for them to have facilities. So the CCC, California Conservation Corps, performed the same work with the same crew leader on the Peavine pipeline, and they did a tremendous job. That was also the same grant funded crew. And the other component of working with the CCC is that it is a workforce development program. And so while we're getting a lot of good work at a very low rate, they are also getting the experience. We've heard great feedback from them working out here that they loved it, thought it was beautiful. And they actually, 3 of the crew members from that crew have since gotten full-time jobs in the industry. One of them with state parks and 2 of them with the Forest Service. So it's really cool to see our project kind of doing good for the community. In terms of the trees that need to be removed, we did a inventory of them. So we had a forester basically just walk the whole alignment and pick out which trees were hazardous, whether dead, leaning over the pipeline, so it'd be dangerous in the future, or things like that. And that's where we came up with that 700-ish number. And we find that these trees need to be removed independently of the pipeline replacement project. Staff's view is that the pipeline replacement project is probably needed in the long term, but this would be the first step towards that, and it has independent value on its own. That trail provides access through our largest property, the Ben Lomond Mountain property, and so being able to have that clear and have that free of hazards would be huge for us. In terms of the CCC crew, the crew is competitive. So it is a grant funded crew, and there is only 1 of them, I believe. And so getting on their schedule is important. It's my understanding that the crew is funded for at least 5 years. So it's not necessarily a time crunch. So we could try to get on their schedule later if we wanted to defer this to later. But my recommendation is to move forward with it now. We've been on their schedule for this time for about a year now. The total cost of the CCC work is 95,000. For the forester supervision, it's about 10,000, and the bathroom rental is about 9,000. So that would be a total of 113,000. And for that 113, we would be receiving around 450,000 of grant funded labor. So it's like a 1 to 4 in terms of what we're paying and what we're getting. And we've already invested about $200,000 in the project between the hazard tree survey and the environmental review of the project. In terms of actually building the pipeline, our CIP plan has $10 million budgeted for that in fiscal year 28-29 and 29-30. So yeah, with that, I will hand it over to you for any questions or comments.
Yeah, before we go to the committee for questions and comments, I wanted to make sure I was clarifying what this pipeline was serving. So this pipeline is going to Clear Creek. Does it also go to Sweetwater Creek?
Yes,
So it does go all the way.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 intakes along the way
Right.
at different creeks.
Right, but the two primary are Sweetwater and Clear, right?
Yeah.
Sweetwater's at the end.
Yeah.
So this 5.6 miles encompasses that whole distance.
Correct.
Okay, because there was a reference in here to Foreman. I think that confused me a little bit.
Foreman is the very end.
Is the
point.
end of it, right?
Yeah.
But didn't mention Sweetwater, and so I was curious about that.
And actually, I think we would slightly realign it because it used to run from Sweetwater at one end all the way to Foreman, and then it went up to Lyon Treatment Plant because there was like a pressure breaker at Foreman. But instead, we're getting a pressure breaker. I don't know the exact terminology at the treatment plant, and so it wouldn't have to go all the way down to Foreman. Go straight to the treatment plant.
Pressure reducing.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that clarification, any question? Yes, Lori?
So I understand that we've got maybe 5 years, but I think Mike Powers said, this survey is only good for the next 90 days. And it also sounds like there were trees that were less than 10 inches around. That he's also a significant number that need to be taken out. And I'm just kind of wondering, and then also there's a note in here about the permits that are needed. So I'm wondering how long the permitting process is going to take. I think that we should try to get these guys on schedule as soon as possible, taking into account the permitting thing. I was also wondering what a significant number of less than 10-inch diameter trees is. And is it so significant that it could make the project take longer than we think it will? I understand we're also anticipating we're going to get 90% of our funding back. So I don't think the porta potties and the food and all that is really going to have much of an impact if it does go longer. And then just wondering what is going to happen with all that biomass. So.
Yeah, so I'll start with the biomass. So everything out there, it's very remote. Obviously, it's like 5.6 miles and it's a hiking trip. Like you can't really bring any type of vehicle on that. So everything is just cut and usually lopped if possible, cut up into small pieces and just left in place off the trail. Obviously, we try to go downhill as much as possible, so it's not a danger in the future for it to slide down. But trees are kind of felled where they can be. Can you remind me of the first parts of your question?
The permitting.
Permitting, yeah. So we just filed the notice of exemption for this project. So we have that permitting done. It was planned for this work to start in September because that's outside the nesting bird season. And so that would save us money. We won't have to do nesting bird surveys. And the project should be able to proceed if we were to move it forward. And then there's one other piece in the middle that I think.
Oh, the significant amount of less than 10 diameter, like how significant is that going to be?
Yeah, I mean, really where I think the costs come from for this work is cutting the bigger trees. I don't think that those smaller trees are necessarily going to be a big ordeal. I was out there with the CCC on Peavine for a couple of days, and some of the big trees, it might take like an hour or something, or like 2, because they have to take a look at this giant tree. They have to figure out which the best way to fell it. They have to clear an area around it. and then they have to get in there and actually make cuts, make sure everything's going well. It's like a very, they follow a very good process. And so it does take a little longer. Some of them are also, as I mentioned, it's workforce development. Some of them are learning. So they let different people kind of come in and learn the process. So yeah, I think it's really the bigger trees that take most of the time. I don't think the less than 10-inch trees are really that much of a time suck. And yeah, they weren't even included in the survey because of that.
Okay, thank you. And if I could do I mean, could we still get the CCC for September, or, I mean, how far out are they booking themselves?
Yeah, so we have them booked for September, on, assuming that we move forward with this. They, if we don't move forward with it, then we can try to rebook them. If someone books them first, you know.
Yeah.
There's only so much we can do, but, yeah. I'm not exactly sure on when we could book them next, because it is first come, first serve. So if another project comes first, it comes first.
And so no more environmental permitting that needs to be done at this point? We're good to go?
Yeah, for the tree removal portion of the project, good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Michael, maybe a couple.
Thank you. What was the process involved with the contract for the registered professional forester? And is a registered professional forester actually needed for this particular project?
That's a good question. It is a CCC crew, so they are relatively like on the learning end of things. Their crew leader is, I believe, a registered professional forester as well. But for Peavine at least, we kind of felt that it was better to have our own forester out there to make sure that everything was kind of following our wishes. Everything was being done properly. Mike Powers has many more years of experience than their crew lead, despite the crew lead also being an RPF and very qualified. So yeah, I think it's more of having our internal person to help out and make sure that everything is following our kind of prescription and what we want.
So Mike's been a long-term kind of a contractor with the district?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. And as a professional forester, I'm happy to see that it is a little more expensive to get a forester, just slightly than a portable toilet. That's good to know, for my own well-being.
I'd say something around that, but I don't know.
And again, when is the expected pipeline operation supposed to actually commence? Not the pre-work, but the actual pipeline operation.
So we have money budgeted in 28, 29, and 29, 30, I believe it is. And so not for a while, assuming that or not budgeted in our CIP list, that's when it's projected for. So not for a while is based on that. Yeah.
So out of all the trees, the 700 trees, which comes into about like 140 a mile or so, are most of them dead? Are dying? Are they? Do you know what the species breakdown? Are we dealing with conifer? Are we dealing with hardwood? Or what's the?
There's actually.
Is there a species breakdown?
Well, not a species breakdown, but there's a table about dead trees, which varies here from 52% to 90% dead along the pipeline segment that they were talking about.
And so I'm assuming when they're saying dead because there's no species breakdown, that we're talking mostly hardwood or fir.
Yeah, and we do have a full breakdown. I just didn't include it in here. I could not tell you off the top of my head exactly what that species breakdown is, but I'm guessing it's mostly fir or hardwood in general.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
I'm just thinking that fir could be a substantial amount of material, and so could large hardwoods out there. And I'm wondering if they're going to come down no matter what. And I've been dealing with this same issue. We've been dealing with a lot of masticators and doing other aspects of it as well, trying to get this stuff on the ground. And it's important to get it on the ground before winter. And I think your timeline's reasonable. But I do wonder, it's a lot of material. I don't really have an answer or a comment other than that. It's just I'm concerned, depending on the size of these trees, this could be substantial, and you do want to get them in contact with the ground. You do want them to get moisture. You do want them to rot. But it does seem as if there may be a temporary issue with fuel loading out there. that might be a concern. And this also doesn't seem to address wood that's already on the ground. Will that be kind of lopped and scattered as part of this project as well?
If it is over the trail, yeah.
Just over the trail?
Or, you know, potentially threatening the trail in the future if it's upslope and looking like it's gonna come down. Basically, we want the trail clear so that we can rebuild our pipeline. So that we can actually, people can walk on it without danger, but also the pipeline in the future wouldn't be at danger from, you know, say the tree sliding down on it or a tree falling on it or whatever else.
I mean, if you take 5.6 miles times 5,280 divided by 752 trees, it's like a tree every 40 feet.
That's what I got, 40
Yeah.
feet.
So
So
it's,
I will say Peavine had like 500 trees over a 1.3 mile stretch.
Yeah.
So if we're worried about fuel loading, like Peavine was probably more of a concern, I would say, just based on the high density of hazardous trees there.
yeah, well, and in these circumstances, I mean, perhaps there's a potential for pile burning if there's some a usable or accessible point that you feel comfortable with. But it sounds like you're really tight lining this trail.
well, I tell you, I did walk the Peavine Trail.
Yeah.
And saw the trees after the trees were cut, and I'd like to walk this one too, if possible, at least part of it. There's really no place to do that. The mastication, I don't even know how you would do that. It's pretty steep. There are some slopes that are like that.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
there's a lot of slopes that are like that.
That's really the biggest constraint is just access, even for rebuilding the pipeline. I think that's why costs are higher because we're expecting to helicopter in pipe and yeah, it's a whole process.
Yeah, I mean, there is at least on the Peavine Trail, most of the trail has a bench that was cut out back in the late 80s or 90s, whenever the CCC crew put the original pipe in. About 6 feet, some places 8 feet, that sort of thing. Some places it does get down pretty narrow. But yeah, there's really no place you could,
Where you're getting equipment in that.
yeah, you're not getting any equipment in there.
I guess, and I don't want to bog this down, but I guess I worry that we have infrastructure in there that may be incredibly difficult to manage fuels around in the future.
Well, this is going to be a challenge, no question.
Yeah.
There was no management of fuels done on the raw water pipeline before. Though that pipe was put in without any tree removal, which was my understanding anyway at the time. So we've at least through this process going to reduce that. But yeah, going forward, if the district does not maintain a fire break around the pipeline, and since the board, in my opposition, is not going to bury the pipeline or at least cover it up to reduce the possibility of it being burned. If a fire goes through there again, it'll burn the pipe because we're using plastic. So,
Well, it's not an if, it's a when.
yeah,
The fire will go there again.
hopefully 40 years from now. Maybe.
One note is that one potential project we're looking at in terms of grants is a fuel break behind Lion treatment plant, and that is where 5 Mile Pipeline runs. And so that's a potential location for that.
Well,
Right.
the bottom line is the board, I think again, this is my personal opinion, based on, I would say, faulty information, made a decision to use plastic and not cover it. So when a fire goes through, or if a fire goes through, it will get burned again. Now, I think the argument was at that time that, well, the cost of doing that, replacing the plastic, is less than trying to put in something that's fire hardened. So we'll just go with a cheap option now and be done with it. Anyway, we don't want to get off into that too much. Other than the sort of relative water generation for the north system, which does not include Felton. Surface water is about 50%, and out of that, Peavine's 20, Foreman's 40, Clear is 30, and Sweetwater's 10. Hopefully that adds up to 100. Close enough anyway. So the Clear Creek and Sweetwater Creek is a significant portion of the surface water. Those are also pre-1914, is that the right year?
I believe.
Water rights, so there are fewer restrictions on the water rights than what we have at Felton, which is 1925, 27, something like that. So, it's a significant source of water for us.
I understand. And then I guess the final bit would be, in general, what's the swath off the trail that were being examined for hazard trees? I mean, were they going all the way to a tree length in a sense that some of these trees might be considerable
I mean, I'm sure there was an actual,
metric or something?
yeah, but I don't remember what that was. Essentially, I don't think a full tree lane, but it was within a reasonable distance to.
Wasn't it 80 feet is what I
80,
thought I
okay.
saw.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, I think it's kind of just being realistic with it. There probably was an
Oops.
actual metric, but when you're out there, you're not.
50
measuring.
50 feet,
50 feet.
unless a tree was really big, then I think they went out to 80, so.
Well, that's just all dead trees less than 10 inches within 50 feet.
Mm.
That's not the whole spectrum.
Oh,
of
I
the dead-
think,
of the
well,
dead
he
tree.
did talk about it, was 80, here it is, trees that pose a hazard within 80 feet of the pipeline.
Okay.
But if its height was too short to reach the pipeline, if the tree limb was away from the pipeline, it was not listed for
Right,
removal.
it's not a hazard tree. Thank you.
Okay, Robert, do you have any questions or comments? No? I think we've covered most of them from my point of view. Any comments from the public on whether we should do this?
Yeah, I realize it's a predicament. I appreciate Michael's point about the fire fuel loading. Yeah, the fire is going to be worse than they were before the fire with all this dead wood up there. So, you know, and I haven't walked that territory, but I don't know the size of these intakes. Is there any way that water can be used to fight a fire from those intakes so that we have some local source of fire suppression at the site? I don't know. I know, you know, we talk about using streams around here for in case of extreme danger of fire and stuff like that. I was just wondering if there's a water source that we can use up there to help us fight a fire and that when that happens. Thank you.
Director Fultz kind of stole my thunder a little bit. I was gonna point out the pre-1914 water rights. I think the water sources on Ben Lomond Mountain are the crown jewels of this water district. And also you talked about the percentages, which I wanted to say, we're at 40% capacity of what we used to have. And I'm kind of disappointed that 5 years after the fire, this is where we are. I went to a meeting like this a couple of years ago when Carly Blanchard was the environmental programs manager, and I remember her saying, we're not going to be able to do the Peavine pipeline in 2024. And then I was at another committee meeting when Garrett said, well, we're not going to be able to do the Peavine pipeline in 2025. And now I guess we hope that that'll be done in 2026. So that has slipped 2 years that I've seen. And I'm really nervous about hearing this 5 mile pipeline targeted for 2930. That's another 5 years. Disappointed. But anyway, these are the crown jewels of this water district because they don't have the restrictions on like in Felton. Other water districts like South Valley, Soquel, they don't have any surface water at all. City of Santa Cruz has plenty of surface water, but they don't have pristine water sources way up high, you know, in watershed land without any pollution coming from houses and other development. Let's see. So another thing I remember for years, Director Fultz saying he would like to get out there and see the state of things, but it was too dangerous before the trees were taken down. So I'm glad to hear you finally got out to see the Peavine pipeline. But I'm kind of thinking maybe someone like Mr. Duffy, if he had a chance to look at the Peavine pipeline, he might understand the situation a little better. It might be good if there was a chance for somebody. I mean, he's a professional forester, he's on the committee, so I guess I think he would get more out of it than I would if I went on I'd be happy to go too, but I think he would get more out of it than I. So I hope we can get all these water sources back soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, it's I'll go out on the limb here and say that when the pipeline was installed the first time, there was significantly less regulation around what could and couldn't be done, and all sorts of things. But I think Mr. Holloway's concerns about how long this is going to take and whether or not it'll slip is well founded. I'm still skeptical of a $10 million number. I think the number I came up with for the 5 Mile pipeline was more along the lines of 40 to 50. And that's also assuming that FEMA will reimburse us somewhat faster than what they have been doing. We could be looking at a 5-year reimbursement schedule for FEMA at this point, which means we have to front all that money. And that is a enormous undertaking. Anyway, we'll let the engineers and figure out what the costs are going to be, but I hope it's 10 million, but I think we need to plan for something worse than that.
And again, this item.
No, I know.
Reiterate
It's
is
not
the
anything
fee
to do with
removal.
it. Yep, no, I get it. Any other follow-up questions or comments? No. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that's been recommended here, which is that the environmental committee, I move that the environmental committee recommend to the board of directors to award contracts to the California Conservation Corps, Mike Powers Forestry, and United Rentals for the 5 Mile pipeline hazardous tree mitigation.
I'll second.
Okay, I have the motion and a second. We'll need to take roll on this.
Yep.
Yep.
Director Foltz,
Yes.
okay. Duffy,
Yes.
yes. Mickelson,
Yes.
yes. Williams,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously 4-0. Thank you very much. We will now. Sorry, you don't have the. I gotta scroll back up. Okay, the Olympia Volunteer Program next on the agenda.
yeah, and we already kind of discussed this a little bit. Let's see if I have anything additional to add. Yeah, honestly, I think we've kind of discussed this already, but yeah, the volunteer program is intended as a kind of to bridge the gap between this project that happened, removing all the broom, and then hopefully the implementation of the HCP, which will open up funding through the endowment for us to actually do some of this management. I'll also mention that we have the RCD has allocated some grant funds for us to develop a plan and to do some of the work in between along with this volunteer program. So the RCD has been a great partner in this, from doing that initial project to trying to find funding moving forward for this. Yeah, with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
We pretty much covered this one before.
No. Yeah. Unfortunately.
I have one quick.
Yeah.
How many hours do you anticipate that first or any of these sessions being? Is it kind of a 2, 3, 4 hour early morning session, or what do you anticipate?
I was
that
thinking
being?
3 hours, and trying to do it early in the day, but not so early that people don't show up or like make it, but it's definitely like August, it'll be warm. So, do you remember what time we said we were starting? 8:30. Okay, so 8:30 to 11:30 is
And-
kind of what we were hoping for.
And what do you anticipate the district's commitment as far as staff or other people would be as well?
Yeah, so we would be providing materials like for this first one, just gloves, and probably coffee and maybe like donuts or something. And in terms of staff, it would be me out there, Janelle, if she would like to come, and then Jody. And maybe the RCD would send someone as well, but that's on them. Yeah, and basically that would be it. The goal with the volunteer program is that we would not be like coordinating it long term. the goal is kind of like Quail Hollow Ranch has now, where they have a volunteer who kind of manages the program. My goal would be to build up this program and then eventually hand it off to someone else, like the Friends of San Lorenzo Valley Water, or some entity or individual volunteer who wants to step up to kind of keep it running in the long term.
If I can say though, I mean, I think this is where I was talking about partnerships. The Friends of San Lorenzo Valley Water District, they won't volunteer for this. I guarantee you that. They're not into implementation. And this is a daily, weekly, monthly type implementation thing. If they do, that'd be great, but I wouldn't count on that. This is where I think partnering with the Zianti Land Bank or some of the other folks that are in the area that are in the business of doing this probably makes a lot of sense. If your goal is in fact to hand it off, if it's to hand it off, then I would say establish those partnerships right up front, hand it off right now. And just provide supervisory or oversight or what have you on what they're doing. We have a lot of work to do to get pipe in the ground, to get construction underway, and anything that takes away from that is not as high a priority. Any other comments from the committee before we go to public comment?
Yeah, the county, I've seen it various times in front of Henry Cowell, has a trailer, informational trailer that you walk through that's all Sand Hills education. You know, you can get that and put that up at the Zianti Fire Department at the same time you're doing that. There's your educational aid component to that.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Even for the tour, that would be interesting too.
Any other public comment, Bruce? Okay, thank you for that. I think we've got all the comments ready. Let me scroll back here now. Next one is grant opportunities. I'm very interested to hear about this.
Yeah, so there are a few grant opportunities that have kind of opened up to us just recently, as well as a few that we've been kind of involved in. So I'll start with the first one, which is the CAL FIRE Fire Prevention Grant. This one opened a few weeks ago and closes in a few weeks. I am currently working on drafting this, and the project that is currently proposed will be a combination of that Olympia broom removal, which is a fuel reduction project, as well as doing some of the fuel reduction in defensible space around our infrastructure to help protect them in the case of fire. I'm shooting for around $350 to $500. I'm not exactly sure yet. $1,000 application, and yeah, just kind of working to draft that and get that ready to go. We're also working with our grant writer Dudek to kind of get final review on that and make sure all our ducks are in a row, essentially. So that's a great opportunity. I am not sure how competitive our application is going to be for this, because it's the first grant of this type that's opened up in a while. I've heard there will be quite a few entities in our county applying, and typically they limit it to only like 1 or maybe 2 entities per county that get a grant fund. And yeah, some of the other applications I've heard of from our county are rather good. And ours is kind of maintenance for previous projects that we've done, essentially. And so I'm hopeful, but we'll have to see how it actually goes. The next one is the Cal OES hazard mitigation.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
on that, just a clarifying question. Is the fuel reduction around infrastructure for fuel reduction that's already been done, or is it for additional infrastructure that hasn't had that fuel reduction done yet?
So it's really about priorities. Obviously, vegetation grows back, and if there's vegetation around our treatment plant.
My question is, it for new? Because we've done a bunch.
Mix.
Is it for new, or is it for the ones we've already done?
We're hoping to do a mix. So for instance, if we have a high priority site like our treatment plant that has been treated in this past round, but there's already vegetation growing back, I would like to take care of that. Whereas if there's some sites that haven't been treated in this past round, then I would like to go out there and treat those as well. But let's say it's a lower priority piece of infrastructure, we'll just have to figure out where our priorities lay and put the crew where is needed. To me, it's about priorities, and it would be a mix of both maintenance and new clearing. I guess we were talking about this the other day, like with vegetation management, like kind of what is maintenance and what is like a new project, because it's kind of like an ongoing thing that we're always doing. So yeah, that was just kind of a funny insight that we were thinking about.
Great, thanks for that. Yep.
Is there a reason you're kind of capping the amount at around 500,000? Because it seems like you could widen that up, and usually they're 3 to 5 year grants. So
Yeah, I think it would make us more competitive to have a smaller grant, because let's say I think most of the other grants or applications I've heard of from our county have been for basically near the max amount. And so I think there might be potential for us to receive the funding more so if we have a smaller, not maxing it out amount, and they could pair it with maybe another smaller application. Yeah, that's just kind of the view, as well as kind of just based on the spending amounts and what we expect. I think that will be sufficient for another 2 or 3 years of this type of maintenance.
one of the things that I found in grants is like if you get multiple partners involved, it tends to make them a little bit more attractive. I wonder if there might be neighbors who may have a couple of 100 acres here or there that may also be able to get treated. Maybe we get that number a little higher, because the size of the project does matter for CAL FIRE as far as attention. It's a political entity like anything else. So if we are able to get a more treated acres with that grant money, we may see a little bit more competitive on that. But you certainly more partners and certainly more into the WUI is really what they're after if we have that opportunity.
Totally agree. And we have kind of reached out for partnerships on this, but it's a relatively small grant cap compared to normal CAL FIRE grants at 950,000.
Okay.
And most of the entities that we reach out to are already applying and have their projects kind of lined up. So yeah, we are, especially with the RCD, we're preparing that the Lion shaded fuel break for future grants, but for this one we don't have any solid partners. But I do like the idea of, yeah, because obviously treating new acres is what they want, so they can report it on their 30 by 30 and say that they treated more acres. So I'm not sure what the land trust is doing with their property. They have the quarry right next to ours, but that's a potential. If we're going to treat our quarry, they could try to treat theirs as well. Yeah, so I like that idea.
Well, I know that we've had several like fire safe groups come in, or Firewise groups come in, and anyone who's doing like community work and kind of fire hardening these communities, even if you're just adding small amounts of acreage, it can be a higher priority for CAL FIRE hardening these neighborhoods and communities around our area. And that's what we want to be trying to do anyway. So if we can reach out at a reasonable level, helping our local communities that are next to us, that's going to be beneficial. But you're right, 900 is kind of a low cap. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next grant process.
Yeah, so this is the California Office of Emergency Services Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. We completed our local hazard mitigation plan, and so we submitted that to FEMA, and that got formal approval. Our last step is going to be to bring that to the board for a resolution accepting it, and then we essentially have our finalized local hazard mitigation plan. And what that does, it opens up this whole new cabinet of funding for us from the hazard mitigation grant program. So that is awesome. That grant funding opens whenever there's a declared disaster in the state, a presidential declared disaster. And usually that happens like once a year. And so essentially what happens is we kind of plan our projects and submit them to this portal. And then once that opens, we can try to push those projects forward to get funding. We have 2 current projects that were funded before we actually got this plan submitted. But I think this is a great program that will help us to, obviously mitigate future hazards. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Next, we got Measure Q. I'm sure all of you are well aware of Measure Q, but it's that local parcel tax. Expected to generate $7 million per year. And that money is focused on water conservation and quality, wildfire risk reduction, wildfire and habitat protection, coastal protection, community resilience. All these sound like great things that we want to do. Only about 40% of the funding is available every year for grants. So that is one restriction. There's only like $2.8 million available per year for the whole county in terms of grants, because the other parts are dedicated to the city, the RCD, and unincorporated areas, the county. So they also want to see us use, or not us, but whoever is getting the money, to use that as match for bigger grants. And so that's something to take into account. And yeah, kind of having our projects ready to go allows us to get this funding so that we can apply for bigger grants. So that's something I want to do, is get our projects more laid out and more detailed so that we can have them ready to go when grant applications do open, solicitations to open. And Measure Q, there's a Citizens Oversight Advisory Body, which is helping to guide the development of the program and kind of implement the program. And I've taken part in some of the stakeholder feedback meetings as they're kind of deciding where the priorities of Measure Q should be and how they're going to like score projects and decide how they should award the money. For other sources and relevant info, we have the Santa Cruz Mountains Regional Priority Plan. It's a collaborative initiative of the Santa Cruz Mountains Stewardship Network, which we're a part of, to highlight the critical natural resource and community protection needs across the region. Essentially, we submit projects that we think are good fits, and then annually they collect all those projects and rank them, or just kind of highlight them as priorities. And we're able to use that once our project's on there to say, look, this is a regional priority, like you should fund it. So that's cool. We're still waiting to see what the actual like rankings are in terms of the priorities. But yeah, it's a great opportunity. And then we talked about Bear Creek wastewater at our last meeting, but we're hoping that the EPA technical assistant will provide us a grant or a funding pathway so that we can work on that system. And yeah, that's it. I will open it up to questions or comments.
Yeah, Laura.
So maybe I'm just making this up, but I thought at a prior meeting, we had talked about trying to prioritize all the projects that we want to do. And I'm just wondering, because twice in the memo, it says, oh, we have $240,000 dedicated for this stuff. And it's sort of like, okay, but especially the ones with the matching fund requirements, like, do we need to take a more holistic look at it? Because I thought, am I making it up that we talked about doing that? Like taking a broader look of all the things so we could prioritize them, especially if we're
You're not making it up.
going to be dipping into that 240,000. Like, you can't just keep saying, oh, we have 240,000, so we can cover this if 113 is going to this project already, you know? So I'm just wondering, I'm sure you guys have your own plan of priorities and know where the funding could come from and all of that, but I'm just wondering if anyone else on the board would want to see something like that.
When you say like a broader look at things, could you just like go a little more?
Well, so, right. So you've discussed many projects that you want to do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, I'm thinking of some sort of spreadsheet that says, okay, this project, this is where potential funding sources could be. Is there a matching fund requirement? How much do we think that that would be? Like, so as you're applying for these grants, you have this bigger picture in mind.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, so in the engineering committee, there is a effort underway to establish a capital improvement spending policy around how you prioritize projects. one of the elements of that is projects that have grant funding being higher in the priority than those that don't. So I think you were probably referring to that, and the kinds of projects that Chris is talking about would need to be entered into that because you'd be spending, basically cash that is left over after funding operations for being able to do that. I think it all ties together very nicely, or should tie together very nicely. And one of the things I know that Jason is going to be working on as he moves into taking the district over and operationally getting things aligned. Because I think it's absolutely right that if you don't have a clear picture of what all the projects are, and you don't have a means to prioritize those, you wind up having a lot of ad hoc and chaos. That's the way the district's been run previously. And it has resulted, I think, in a lot of people wondering, how do things get decided? Because there's no policy to point to. You have no way of describing.
And I will say for grants, I'll pull this up on the screen. Our grant writer provides a matrix of different funding sources, and we provided them kind of a list of our projects that we would like to get done. And based on that, they've found grants that would be relevant for us, but most of them don't currently have, they're not open currently. We've kind of run into that there's not a ton of grants open currently. But yeah, so give it a second here.
And did you provide this in a previous memo?
I might have provided in a previous memo, but I can also provide it after. Let's see how far I can zoom in here. But yeah, so for different kind of program or project types, you can see like the different funding agency and the particular funding program, due dates, and then like match requirements kind of thing. So I think this kind of alludes to what you're talking about.
Absolutely, yeah.
I do think from a district perspective, there's often a mismatch between the funding that's available. Like our CIP list is our infrastructure. And so a lot of the times the fire and forestry funding that is available is not those projects, So it's kind of trying to fit this infrastructure piece into the fire piece, and it's like a square block and a triangle hole. You're trying to like make it fit together, and it's a little hard sometimes. There are grants that come out through like different entities, like Department of Water Resources, that are more relevant to infrastructure. But yeah, I do find sometimes that our CIP list, our priorities in terms of projects to get done, don't exactly align with the grant funding that is available. So that is something to take into account.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just thinking like, so what if in, 4 months, there's another grant that comes up that requires matching, and we could have gotten $1 million if we've been able to put up, the full amount of funding that we have, but we've already allocated it to a smaller project. That's kind of what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, and it's it's
Really
always
hard.
a game you play, but
Crystal ball.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, like,
But I'd love to see that document if you would.
Yeah.
Outside of the funds, which are significant, and I understand that about, but there's also a very limited staff time. And I wonder with these grants that maybe we are taking and are still important, but maybe are lower priority, are we still having to absorb significant staff time to engage with these other grants to do this other work? Or are we able to kind of offload that on the consultants and not have to wear that too heavy? Because that's more the missed opportunity if we're spending a lot of staff time doing grant work that is important but not top priority. We should be trying to focus the staff time on the top priorities if we can, even if we don't have the funding, we should be looking for that funding instead of getting diverted off. And I'm hoping that's the case, that we're not getting diverted off.
Yeah, I think usually like we got the grant writers so they could write our grants. But for this particular grant that I'm writing right now, the CAL FIRE one, I have been told that our chances are not, all that high. It's not like, I feel like usually if you're writing a grant, you're pretty confident in your chances. This one, we're not as confident. And so we kind of made the decision to handle it internally. Largely, it was just a rehashing of our past project also. So it should just be turning that document into this next one. Yeah, so that is largely the reason for that, but obviously we have our grant writer to write grants, so.
Well, it's not, and I'm not necessarily talking about the writing and the application. I'm talking about the actual implementation of the grants once we get them. Are we using significant staff time on the implementation, supervision, running out of crews, doing that whole aspect of it, or is that outsourced as well?
That is typically not outsourced. For instance, for the Olympia one, that was a partnership with RCD. The RCD handled that whole side of things, so that was obviously a lot easier for us. But yeah, typically that will fall on us. We can have the grant writer, well, they wouldn't really handle implementation. That's like an internal thing, you know? We could hire a consultant to do that, or we could find different staff resources. Yeah.
So we are looking at the organizational chart and kind of adjusting what people do in their positions, and that's one of the things that I'm looking at is someone who can assist management with the management of the grants themselves. So
That'd be helpful, I think.
Robert, any questions or comments? I think this sort of gets into what I've talked about before, which is grants ebb and flow, right? And grants ebb and flow along with what money's available from typically governments and in some cases NGOs. Right now we're in a very challenging macro situation with federal and state budgets, and whether or not we're going to have the same kind of success we've had over the last few years is in question. You combine that with the fact that we're now 5 years in the rearview mirror for a lot of these agencies that are looking at giving grants. There are new fires every year, and we're kind of old history at this point. So we become lower priority. From my point of view, our function, we are a water district. We deliver water. We have to stay focused on delivering water. So I want to protect our infrastructure. I'd like to figure out if there's a way of creating barriers between our watershed and habited areas, at least getting rid of the trees, if not the brush, so that you at least reduce the fire load, if not eliminate it. Those are things to me that are more are the higher priority for things. There's a lot of things you can apply for grants for, but whether or not they're directly related to what our core mission is, I think is what we're going to need to be looking at as a board, as a district, as management, where you have scarce resources and where you're going to apply your time. I am skeptical that you're going to get a grant for maintenance of fire breaks around infrastructure. I think a lot of these grant organizations say, hey, we'll pay for it once, but after that, you're on the hook to maintain it. And if it's not a priority to you to maintain it, why the heck should we be giving you more money? I live across from a tank, the Highland tank, and I do a fair amount of the maintenance around at least the downhill slope of it because. So that's something we as a district need to, again, it goes back to priorities. What is the priority here? My priority is protect our infrastructure. That's the priority. Anything other than that, we need to have a conversation, in my opinion. Okay, public comment, I guess Bruce, any comment?
I don't have a whole lot to add, but I've been impressed in the last few years at how much grant funding the district has been able to get. The one with the meters, and I know we got to replace X number of meters every year. But the state funding to just pay for that, even though it's basically our responsibility. I'm just really impressed that there's money available and we were able to tap it. I was reading the paper this week and I saw that our state representatives had gotten $4.5 million for the Santa Cruz City Library. I began participating in that whole library bond process in 2011, and I saw the division of the money, how that was worked out, and then it's been years since that bond issue, and the city has not built its library. I mean, the county built libraries in Aptos, Boulder Creek, Felton, you know, from that money. And we, by the way, the county did get $1 million from our state representatives for the Felton Library. So that happened several years ago. Anyway, that's the kind of help that we're gonna need if we're ever gonna annex Groton Bray, Forest Springs, and the
Yeah.
Basin Water Company. 4.5 million, you know, that's a heck of a lot of money, but I don't think it's enough really for us to do what we need to do. But it's just another potential funding source if we can ever get our state representatives to help us out.
Good luck with that.
They've
Um,
done it a little bit.
Okay, any other follow-up? All right, well, I think it sounds like on this one, establishing priorities and where you're gonna spend your time is and how you're gonna manage it is, I mean, you know, that's really the core here.
I'm sorry, I did have one
Oh,
question.
sure,
Chris.
go right ahead.
Do you know when that ranking is supposed to come out?
Of the regional priority plan?
Yeah.
I don't, I know they're actively working on it, but this is the first year for the first time doing the process. So I am not aware, but
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
hopefully soon.
The second year will be faster than the first. Okay, thank you all for your comments on that. We are at the end of our agenda. On the new business, there's no unfinished business. There is meeting minutes for you guys to review. Any comments on any of the minutes? Don't see any. There's committee comments here reserved for requesting future agenda items. Anybody have any future agenda items? Other than that, we'll work with Jason and Chris on the next meeting agenda. And at that point, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You did just fine.